Hi, this is Dr. Conley again. Today I want to talk to you a little about culture. What is culture? Culture is the language, values, beliefs, norms, and material objects passed on from one generation to the next. Culture really does guide our behavior. Think about some of the things you do perhaps in your family, things that have been passed on from one generation to the next. Oh, we always do this at that time, or every Sunday we do X, Y, or Z. Perhaps things you do every day. That's culture. Once again, it's important to understand that we're not born with culture. Culture is something that is learned. Um, if I were to ask you about what you wore today, how you dressed, that's also culture, something passed on. I show a video called Clothing and Global Culture, which shows how even something, there's a difference between clothing and fashion, between tradition and fashion. Traditions are passed on from one generation to the next. Like ladies, your buttons for your shirt and your pants are on the left. For men, it's on the right. Now I know you all are kind of looking. Today I don't have on any buttons to illustrate that, so sorry. Okay. But once again, culture is passed on from one generation to the next, and we are not born with culture. It's not inherent. It is all learned. There are two types of culture, material culture and non-material culture. Material culture is the tangible, visible culture. When we are looking through that sociological lens at society, these are the things that when we see these particular items, we can tell something about a culture. Examples of material culture: art, jewelry, weapons, machines, buildings, tools, clothing, and hairstyles. When you see people in certain clothing or ethnic costume, you can say, oh, they're this, oh, they're that, they're part of this particular culture. Art, if you go to the museums, you can go to the museums and look at art from particular centuries, particular countries, particular ethnicities. Buildings, anybody watch House Hunters International? You can tell, oh, they're in this particular country, they're in that particular country because of the buildings. Now, if we bring that back home, I happened to live in Arizona for a little bit. If you go down to Florida or Arizona, even the buildings down there, they have a lot of stucco, light colors, and orange roofs. Whereas up here in the Northeast, we don't seem to have a lot of building and architecture that incorporates stucco and roof tiles. However, when I was living in Arizona, somebody built a Tudor home and put ivy plants on it. I'm like, doesn't that belong in New England? I guess they wanted to bring New England to the desert. Okay, so those are examples of material culture. Once again, looking through that lens at different things and different people. Hairstyles can tell us about people, machines, buildings, tools, jewelry, all of those things. The second type of culture is non-material culture. We also call this symbolic culture. Now, where have you heard the word symbolic from? Yes, chapter 1, symbolic interactionism. Symbols are something to which people attach meaning and then use to communicate these meanings. And I want to take a moment to stop and congratulate you and commend you on your applications of the theoretical perspectives to the problems for assignment 5. I saw some of the best top-rated applications that really even expanded my sociological view. And I want to thank you. And for others, perhaps you didn't pay as much attention to the detail of what I was actually asking for. So lesson learned for the future modules and future assignments, okay? All right. Thank you once again. Symbolic culture. Now, how does this play out? I'll talk about some of the components of non-material culture. Gestures. Gestures, the first component. How we use our bodies to communicate with one another. I'll give you an example. I was at an international conference, and there was like a large greenery, and I saw someone in the distance, and I did this. And they came up to me and they said, Dawn, in my culture, that's offensive. And I'm thinking, now if I were to ask you, what does this mean? You'll probably say, come here. And I said, well, how would I do that in your culture? And she said this. Now, to us, this means goodbye, but in her particular culture, that meant hello. In her culture, this was like calling a dog, so it was very demeaning. Okay. Something else. What does it look like I'm doing now? Like I have an itch under my arm. Have you ever traveled to Mexico? If you haven't, or even if you have, be mindful of this in the future, especially if you're in public and somebody comes up to you and wants to fight you, because this here is telling somebody your mother is a whore. Yes, that is in the textbook, but as we see, different meanings to even how we use our bodies. I don't want to do it. I'm just showing a sociological concept. But this here even is like popping the finger in certain cultures. So we just understand that gestures and how we use our bodies really can has the potential to create confusion, but can also be used as a learning opportunity. I know that a lot of you want to travel around the world. So perhaps if you say something or you are around someone from a different culture and they may kind of frown or look a little puzzled, ask, did I say or do something to offend you? And then it can become a learning opportunity for how their particular culture works and operates. Okay. Second component of non-material culture, language. Language is the primary means through which we communicate. Language is also the basis for culture. Without language, imagine if I stood here for 8 minutes and didn't say anything. You would shut the computer off, go back to watching TV and, kind of wait to perhaps hear a sound. If I just stood here like this, no, I won't prolong it any longer. I'm trying to be respectful of your time right now. Okay, language. There are 3 roles or functions of language. Think about the last conversation you had and also the next one you are about to have. Language has 3 roles. You either talked about past memories, you made plans for the future, or you talked about shared perspective or some common interest. Those are the 3 functions of language every time we open our mouths to speak with somebody. Now, values. Values, the third component, are standards by which we determine what is good or bad, beautiful or ugly, desirable or undesirable. Values play a big part in our lives, and some of you even mentioned this in terms of symbolic interactions and values attached to image, etc. Now, think about some of the values, some things that people have told you growing up. Don't do this, don't do that. Those are examples of values, okay? Things that are good or bad. Oh, no, I shouldn't. Oh, yes. Oh, no, that's not good. That's not good. Okay, those are examples of values. Norms. Norms are expected behaviors based on values. We do have expectation or rules that develop out of a group's values. There are 3 types of norms I'd like to discuss. The first, folkways. Folkways are what I consider the common courtesy norms. These are of mild importance. Think about when you're out in public and you hold the door open for someone. What are you expecting them to say? Thank you. Does everybody do it? No. But you know what? I still say you're welcome. At least I've done my part. Okay. Think about when you're in the movies, and I hope this does not apply to any of you, but you're in and watching a good movie, all of a sudden the phone rings, and you hear somebody say, hello, I'm in the movies. They're breaking the norm of you're not supposed to talk in the movies, okay? Or you're not supposed to disrupt the person next to you. Hopefully it doesn't apply to you. Okay. Violation of folkways are met with, kind of mild sanctions. Sanctions can be both positive and negative. Positive sanctions could be something simple as a smile, a head nod. Negative sanctions could be a frown or some choice words, okay, or some unfriendly gestures which people understand the communication of what you're saying. Those can be for violations of folkways. Second type of norm, mores. Mores are what I call the core value norms. Think of those things that are instilled in us. Oh, we shouldn't do this. You shouldn't kill. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't cheat. You need to be on time. All of those things have a core value. They are of more importance than folkways. Sanctions, positive sanctions for doing mores. You keep your job, awards, promotions, graduation, that piece of paper you're going for, that receipt, that degree. Negative sanctions could be fired, expelled, fail, okay, incarceration. Okay. Those are all negative sanctions for violation of mores, our core values. The third type of value or norm I want to talk about are norms. I'm sorry about that, got distracted. Taboos. Sorry about that. Taboos. The third type of norm, taboos. Taboos are those things that are strongly ingrained in a society's conscience that the idea of violating a particular norm is met with strong revulsion. What type of things would be considered taboo? Cannibalism. Crimes against children. But just when I said cannibalism, I could see you all squirm a little bit. That would definitely be an example of a taboo. Now, we could have a discussion about the difference between mores and taboos. And I give you the example of Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't know how many of you remember Jeffrey Dahmer. He lived in Milwaukee, and he used to buy teenage boys, prostitutes, and then afterwards he would kill them and then cut up their body parts and put them in his refrigerator. And I can see you all squirming right now. Now, the fact that, and he did this multiple times, and he was caught because his neighbors complained about bad odor coming from his apartment. And the first time the super and a policeman came, he kind of like talked them out of it. And then the next time the manager was kind of like went a step further, and then they discovered what was in his refrigerator. Now, the fact that he was a serial killer and killed multiple times was a violation of a mores more than once. Okay, violation of that core value, do not kill. But then the fact that he then took the dead bodies, cut them up, and put them in his refrigerator to perhaps eat, that's when that act transitioned into a taboo. Okay, I hope I made that distinction very clearly. Alrighty, and that's it for culture, material culture, and non-material culture, and I will see you next week.